Hello everyone, Justin Vacula here, continuing my Stoic Philosophy video series with video number 2 on Epictetus' Discourses, Book 1, Chapter 2, How is one to preserve one's true character in everything? He begins the chapter writing, "To a rational creature, only what is contrary to reason is unendurable, but everything rational he can endure. Blows are not by nature unendurable." How so? See how the Spartans bear a whipping, after they have learned that it is a reasonable thing, but to be hanged, is that not endurable? Even so, when a man feels that it is reasonable, he goes off and hangs himself. In short, we shall find by observation that by nothing is the rational creature so distressed as by the irrational, and conversely, to nothing is he so drawn as to the rational. So here Epictetus is setting forth that humans are rational creatures, or otherwise capable of being rational, and they are drawn to that which is reasonable. But when faced with circumstances they consider to be unreasonable, that's perhaps what can cause us feelings of grief. That's what can upset us. But how are we to determine what is reasonable and unreasonable? Epictetus continues noting that these can mean different things to different people, and that education can help us know what is rational and irrational, what is in accordance with nature. He notes that people have different values. People think about their own character and understand what is good, what is bad, and what they are drawn to. So here Epictetus takes the position that we're capable of understanding what is good, what we should aspire to in life through understanding ourselves, through getting an education. So here we can hear this from some people who talk about objective morality, or who say that there needs to be this absolute standard of morality, perhaps appealing to a religious tradition, saying, oh, well, if you're not religious, you don't have the system of objective morality, then morality is completely subjective. But Epictetus is taking the stance that no, we're capable of learning what is good. And yes, different people will disagree about certain matters, but we can learn and come to understand what is good, what is rational, what is irrational, what is in line with nature, what is reasonable. He writes, "Thus it is reasonable to one man to hold another's chamber pot for him, since he considers only that if he does not submit to this, he will be beaten and lose his dinner, whereas if he does hold it, he will have nothing harsh or distressing to suffer, while to some other man it appears insupportable not merely to hold the pot itself, but to allow anyone else to do so. If you ask me then, shall I hold the pot or not, I will tell you, it is a more valuable thing to get a dinner than not, and a greater disgrace to be given a thrashing than not to be. So that if you measure yourself by these things, go off and hold the pot." So here we're to evaluate certain circumstances to see whether something is rational, in which values we have, how to understand the world and make good decisions through using reason. Education helps us come to these proper conclusions. Although here it's an appeal to force, in that, oh, well, if you don't do what I want you to do, then I'm going to inflict violence upon you. So clearly the rational response here would be to go about this, as long as you're not compromising your values and you think this is to be reasonable. On this matter of compromising values, he writes, "It is you who know yourself and what value you set upon yourself, and at what rate you sell yourself, for different people sell themselves at different prices." So this is interesting here. People are going to make different judgments about the uses of their free time, their time at work, what they're going to do in life. They're selling themselves at different prices. This is a modern concern, surely one in Epictetus' time, in, well, people are going to do things that they don't want to do. People are going to get involved perhaps in work that they don't like. They're going to find themselves in life situations in which they're unhappy. They're making sacrifices. They're exchanging their time for money. And what are we to do? We have to evaluate our current situation, see what is reasonable, understand our values, and not just rush into a situation or continue living an existence that we don't like. We want to have the power, under Stoic philosophy, we can make choices we can understand what we are to do, what is good, how to understand our values and apply them. This chapter again is about how to preserve one's true character in everything. It goes on, he writes about some conflicts here with the individual and culture and society. How are we to act? He writes, "Now, what are you asking me? Is death to be preferred or life? I answer, life. Pain or pleasure? I answer, pleasure. But if I do not act a part in the tragedy, I shall lose my head. Go and act then. But for my part, I will not. Why? Because you regard yourself as just a single thread of many that make up the garment. And then you should give thought as to how you can be like all other men, as one thread desires not to be distinguished from the others. But I want to be the purple, that small and shiny band, which gives luster and beauty to all the rest. Why do you bid me resemble the multitude then? In that case, how shall I be the purple?" So here it seems to be a conflict between preserving one's character, standing out in society. Are we to resemble everyone else, or do we want to stand out? What can be the good of standing out? Are we going to compromise our character if we're going to blend in? Is that a good thing to do? Another modern concern here. He goes on and writes about acting accordingly, about fitting in. "Is it in your power not to allow me to be a senator? But as long as I am one, I must attend. Well then, if you do attend, at least be silent. Do not ask for my opinion, and I will be silent. But I must ask for it, and I must say what seems right to me. But if you do, I will put you to death. Did I ever tell you that I was immortal? You will do your part, and I mine. It is yours to kill, and mine to die without trembling. Yours to banish me, mine to depart without grieving." So here there can be some consequences of applying our virtues, about doing the right thing. Are we going to do the right thing even if we face punishment, even if there are going to be some negative consequences? Well, Epictetus says here that, well, you might inflict violence upon me, but there are some higher concerns. I'm immortal, he's saying. Well, you can kill my body, but I've done the right thing. So is this going to be a sacrifice that some people are going to make? How often in society are people not speaking up about injustice? And they fear if they do, they'll face some consequences. Is it worth speaking up? Which sacrifices are we going to make? What is important to us? So he continues here. "Is it not clear that the possession of these powers is at the same time accompanied by an awareness of them too? And with us too, whoever has such powers will not be ignorant of them. But neither a bull nor a noble-spirited man comes to be what he is all at once. He must undertake hard winter training and prepare himself, and not propel himself rashly into what is not appropriate to him." So here Epictetus seems to advocate the position that we do have strengths as individuals. We can come to know these strengths, and it can be a difficult process to cultivate virtue, to cultivate values, and that we can't just say that we're going to be the best and then next day we wake up and everything is suddenly better, that we're going to have a goal and suddenly accomplish. It's this hard training he talks about. It is possible to improve. It's a positive outlook that Epictetus has of here, and a position of knowing thyself, which is central to philosophy, understanding ourself, understanding our values, understanding our virtues, understanding what we're good at, how we can apply ourselves to live a good life. And to not act impulsively, he's saying, do not propel yourself rashly into what is not appropriate. So if we're considering a major decision, we're going to think about it and consider the consequences, the pros, the cons, and to make a good decision, not to be impulsive, to be careful about what we're doing and what we're going to get into, especially if it's a circumstance that, as he writes, is not appropriate. He continues here, only consider at what price you sell your own will and choice, man, if for nothing else, that you might not sell it cheap. So here, if we're going to compromise our values and characters, we're going to think about what we're willing to do that for. And if we're going to do it, surely it's not going to be for a very small thing. Perhaps we'll give in to peer pressure. Maybe this could be a small drawback if we do. Oh, well, maybe some adolescents face this issue of, oh, well, here, why don't we skip school today? we'll not listen to parents, we'll do these small things. Is this really worth the trade-off? We're going to compromise our values, compromise what is true to us. What are we going to gain from it? And if we do compromise our values, we do make the sacrifice of self-respect, is it going to be worth it? He says, do not sell it cheap. So here, perhaps as adults, if you're going to make a major decision to live your life in a certain way that's not in accordance with your values, surely don't do it lightly here. And if you're going to do it, make sure it's for a good price, as Epictetus is alluding here to, although I think he's being sarcastic or exaggerating here, because he's of course going to suggest that people act in accordance with good character and preserve one's true character, not to just go off the rails here and be a corrupt individual. He continues here, why do all horses become swift? Are all dogs keen at the scent? What then? Because I am not naturally gifted, shall I neglect all care of myself? Heaven forbid. Epictetus will not be better than Socrates, but if I am worse, that is enough for me. Yet I do not neglect my body, yet I do not neglect my property, nor in general do we cease to take pains in any area, because we despair of arriving at the highest degree of perfection. So here he's saying we should be content with not being perfect. It's going to be a process, it's going to be difficult, but we shouldn't despair about this situation. And we're going to make positive steps. We're not going to neglect all of our life just because we're not perfect in one area. We're not going to despair because of this. We'll undergo this long training and this long process. It's not going to be easy, but we can make positive change. Perhaps, too, he's saying that comparing ourselves to others can be dangerous in some sense if we're aspiring to be the best of the best, and we can't reach that goal. We can be okay. We might not be as good as someone else, but we ought to be content with that. Just understand that that is the way things are. But Epictetus also gives us a message that we can make positive changes to improve our quality of life, to cultivate virtue, and to be a better person. All right, so that's chapter 2. Thanks for listening.